I'll never forget the sound the trunk made when I opened it. A low, groaning creak, like the wood itself was warning me to stop. And when the lid gave way, a smell rushed out. Old fabric, dust, something almost metallic, like dried blood. I shouldn't have done it. My daughter had begged me for years, "Mama, promise me you'll never touch what's inside that trunk. Promise me you'll leave it locked." And for years, I kept that promise. But you know what happens when you get old? You start thinking about the truth, about what's been hidden, and whether you'll leave this world carrying secrets that should have been told. That's what made me climb those attic stairs, with my knees aching and my heart pounding, on a rainy afternoon when the house was too quiet. The trunk was sitting there in the far corner, where the roof slants down low. Light slipped through the small round attic window, catching the brass lock. I could almost hear my daughter's voice, sharp and pleading, "Please, Mama, don't open it." I whispered back to the empty attic, "I'm sorry, baby. But I have to know." My hands trembled as I pushed the key in. That key had been tied to the underside of my dresser for 30 years, untouched. And now, with one twist, the lock fell open like it had been waiting. Inside were things I didn't expect. Not money, not jewels, not anything that belonged in a treasure chest. No, what I saw first was a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon. And beneath them, folded clothes, tiny clothes. Baby clothes. I pressed one against my cheek. It smelled faintly of lavender, the kind I used to sprinkle in drawers. And just like that, I wasn't in the attic anymore. I was back in the small kitchen of my childhood home, standing barefoot on cold tile, my mother at the stove. "Don't you ever ask about your uncle," she said once, her voice stern as she stirred a pot of beans. I was no more than 9. "He's gone, and that's the end of it." "But Mama," I asked, "where did he go?" She turned, her eyes hard, spoon still dripping. I said that's the end of it. Back then, adults could silence you with a single glare. But I never forgot the way her hands shook as she wiped the spoon clean. Those letters in the trunk, they were from him. From the uncle I was never allowed to speak of. His handwriting was shaky, desperate, ink smudged from sweat or tears. I didn't read the first one right away. My fingers were stiff, my eyes blurred. Instead, I pulled out a photograph. A black and white picture of my mother, younger than I'd ever seen her, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, handsome in a sharp-boned way, his arm tucked around her waist. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, was a single word, "Forgive." That was when I heard footsteps. I froze, heart jumping. The attic door creaked. "Grandma! You up there?" It was Lily, my granddaughter. She was 16, curious, always digging where she wasn't supposed to. "Yes, baby, I'm here," I called back, sliding the photograph under the bundle of letters. The door opened wider, and her face appeared, framed by the dim light below. "What are you doing? You're not supposed to be climbing stairs alone." I forced a smile. "Just tidying up." "Go on back down, I'll be right there." But Lily's eyes narrowed, sharp like her mother's. "Is that the trunk?" I tried to cover it, but it was too late. She saw. She gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Grandma, Mum told me never to touch that. She said bad things are inside." I felt a sting in my chest at her words. Bad things. That's what my daughter believed. That's what she'd carried all these years. "Lily," I said softly, "sometimes the things we call bad are just the things we're too scared to face." She shook her head, tears already pooling. "No, Grandma. Please close it. Mum will be so mad." I reached out and took her hand, my palm rough against her smooth skin. "Your mama begged me not to open it. But I can't go to my grave wondering. If there's truth in here, we deserve to know." Lily hesitated, then sank onto the floor beside me, legs folded. Then, read it. Read it out loud. I looked at her, startled. Are you sure? She nodded, biting her lip. So I untied the ribbon and opened the first letter. The paper was yellowed, fragile, words written in hurried strokes. Dearest sister. They told you I was dead. They told you I disappeared. But the truth is worse. I was locked away. Buried alive in shame, for sins I did not commit. My throat tightened. The words blurred. This was my mother's brother, my uncle, and he hadn't vanished. He had been hidden. Lily whispered, "Oh my God." I kept reading, voice shaking. They said I brought dishonor, that my choices would ruin the family name. But I swear to you, I loved her. I loved her with every part of me, though they said it was forbidden. They tore us apart. They told lies about me. And when the baby came, they took her away. The attic seemed to tilt around me. The baby. The tiny clothes. Suddenly, I understood. The letters weren't just from my uncle. They were a confession. A plea. Lily grabbed my arm. Grandma, what baby? I couldn't answer. My heart was pounding too hard. Because in that moment, one thought clawed at me, could it be? Could my whole life, my family, be built on a lie? I folded the letter shut, pressing it to my chest. Lily, your mama was right. There are things in here that change everything. Things she never wanted you, or me, to see. Her eyes shone in the dim light. But now we know. We can't know it. I closed the trunk gently, the wood groaning again. No, we can't. Downstairs, a clock chimed. Rain battered the roof. For a long time, Lily and I sat there in silence, the letters between us like a ticking bomb. Finally, I whispered, if your mama ever finds out what I've done, she'll never forgive me. And maybe she shouldn't. Because what's in this trunk, it's not just her story. It's the story of everyone who came before us. And it's darker than she ever let on. I reached for Lily's cheek, brushing away a tear. But you're old enough to hear it. Old enough to carry the truth with me. Her lips parted. Then tell me everything, Grandma. From the beginning. I drew a long, shaky breath. My hands were still resting on the bundle of letters, and I knew, once I opened the next one, there would be no turning back. And so I began. You should have seen me that night, sitting cross-legged on the cold attic floor, the trunk yawning open like some hungry mouth that had waited decades to be fed. My hands were trembling, not just because of the dust that made me cough, but because I already knew, deep in my bones, that what I was about to find would not be ordinary. You don't beg your mother never to open a trunk unless you're hiding something that can break you. I remember whispering to myself, Lord, forgive me, before I touched the first thing inside. It was a faded baby dress, pale yellow, soft as if someone had washed it hundreds of times. A small stain near the collar. Milk maybe. Or tears. I pressed it to my cheek and for a moment I thought of your mother, your sweet mama, when she was only a year old. She loved yellow. She used to clap her tiny hands whenever I wrapped her in that color. But this dress wasn't hers. It was too small, too fragile. I froze. I thought, maybe it belonged to me as a child, saved by my mother. But no, the stitching was newer. My heart rattled inside me. Grandma, what did you do then? I hear you whisper now, leaning closer, your eyes wide. And I'll tell you, though even now my throat tightens. I laid the dress on my lap, and beneath it, folded carefully, was a stack of letters tied with a blue ribbon. I untied them. My hands shook so badly the paper crinkled and tore in the corners. The handwriting was not your grandfather's. It wasn't anyone I recognized. Slanted, urgent letters, like someone was always in a hurry. I read the first line aloud in the attic, my voice bouncing off the wooden beams. I can't forgive you, not for what you did, but I will always love the child. The child. I read faster, eyes racing, chest burning. The letters spoke of visits that never happened, of promises broken, of a child hidden away. The name scribbled at the bottom of each letter stopped me cold, Samuel. Now, children, you've grown up never hearing that name from me. Your mother never spoke it either. But there it was. Over and over again. Samuel. I heard your mother's voice in my head, sharp and frightened. Promise me, Mama. Don't ever open that trunk. And for the first time I understood. I whispered it in the dark, my God. She had a brother. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was young again, back in our old kitchen with its checkered floor and the kettle always whistling too long because I'd forget. Your mother was 10, maybe 11, slamming the screen door behind her, tears streaming down her face. Mama, she cried, he won't leave me alone. Who, baby? Who's bothering you? I asked, kneeling down, pulling her into my apron. She shook her head hard, hair sticking to her cheeks. He says he's my brother. But I don't have a brother. I don't. I remember gripping her shoulders, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the clock on the wall. Who said that? Who told you such a thing? She looked right at me, eyes huge and terrified. The man at the end of the road. He knew my name. He said, your mama never told you about me. I hushed her, stroked her hair, but my own hands were trembling then, just like in the attic years later. I told myself she was confused. Some stranger playing a cruel trick. But that night, after she fell asleep, I asked your grandfather. I can still see him at the kitchen table, cigarette smoke curling around his face. He didn't look at me when I asked, is there a Samuel? He didn't answer either. Just crushed his cigarette so hard the ashtray cracked. And that silence, my loves, was the loudest thing I ever heard. Back in the attic, with those letters piled in my lap, I finally had the truth your grandfather had buried and your mother had carried like a wound. I found more beneath the letters. A photograph, bent at the corners. A boy, maybe 6 years old, standing beside a woman who wasn't me. The boy's smile, it twisted my stomach, because he had your mother's eyes. My daughter's eyes. I pressed that photograph against my chest and I cried. Cried like I hadn't in years. The kind of crying that leaves you gasping, your ribs aching. Because I understood then, your mother's fear, her anger, all the times she pushed me away when I tried to hold her. She was carrying a secret she never asked for, protecting us all from a truth she thought would ruin everything. But secrets don't stay buried. They grow like weeds, pushing through floorboards, breaking houses apart. That night, when I finally stumbled back down from the attic, I nearly collapsed at the kitchen table. My hands still smelled of cedar and dust, my dress damp with tears. And I could hear your mother's voice as if she were standing right behind me. Mama, don't open it. Please. But I had. And now I couldn't unsee Samuel's face. Do you know what haunted me the most? Not that there was another child, but that he had been erased. As if he had never been. And I, his grandmother, had lived my whole life not knowing my own blood. When I tried to sleep that night, I dreamed of a boy running down the dirt road, calling out, "Wait for me, Grandma. Wait." And I woke with my chest aching like someone had split it open. The next morning, I went straight to your mother. She was sitting on the porch, sipping her coffee, staring out at the fields. The sun was just rising, painting everything gold, but her face was pale. She didn't even turn her head when I sat down. I whispered, "I know." Her hand froze halfway to her mouth. She set the cup down, so hard it sloshed. "You opened it," she said flatly. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Why carry this alone all these years? Her jaw tightened. Because it wasn't your burden. It was mine. Your brother. He's not my brother, she snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were blazing, but beneath that fire I saw pure pain. Don't you dare call him that. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Sweetheart, he's part of us. You can't just erase him. Her voice broke then, cracking like glass. That's exactly what I had to do. Don't you see? If I didn't, none of us could have gone on. I sat there, stunned, listening to the birds waking in the trees, the creak of the rocking chair beside us. And for the first time, I realized my daughter, your mother, was living inside a cage she had built herself, locked from the inside. And I didn't know if I had the strength to open it for her, or if doing so would destroy us both. The days after that morning were unbearable. I tried to pretend that life was normal, but every corner of the house seemed to whisper Samuel's name. I kept replaying the photograph in my mind, the boy with my daughter's eyes, smiling like he belonged in our family, yet having been denied it. Every laugh, every creak of the floorboards, reminded me that something essential had been stolen. I decided I had to see him. To know if he was alive, to see if the child in the photo had grown into the man I could almost imagine. But I didn't tell your mother. I couldn't. She'd never forgive me if I acted without her blessing. And yet, the need to know burned hotter than any guilt. I took the letters with me to the local library, the one your grandfather and I used to haunt when we were young, when I dreamt of seeing the world beyond our little town. There, hidden in a corner, I read the letters again, aloud to myself, committing each word to memory. They told me to disappear. That no one would ever look for me. That your mother would grow up thinking I was gone. But I always watched from afar. Always. I ran my fingers over the words. He had watched. That sentence made me ache in ways I couldn't name. Someone, my own blood, had existed in the shadows all these years, waiting, hoping, suffering. The next letter made me gasp. I have a daughter now. Her eyes, they remind me of the sister I loved. I call her Lily in my heart, though her name is not hers. I hope one day she will know the truth. That she will know who she is. My hands froze on the paper. Lily. Ah, Lily. The same name as your little cousin. My heart thumped, the air in the library thick and heavy. Could it be a coincidence? Or was it some cruel twist of fate? I could barely breathe. I had to know. I left the library with the letters clutched to my chest, rain pelting my coat, my feet slippery on the sidewalks. Every face I passed seemed familiar, like a ghost I'd known all my life. And every step I took brought me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I could survive. I went home that night and found your mother sitting on the porch again, the same way she had the morning I'd admitted I opened the trunk. She didn't look at me when I approached. I need to ask you something, I said softly. She didn't respond. About Samuel, I continued, my voice shaking. Did you ever know he had a daughter? Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. Who told you that? I swallowed hard. I found letters. From him. And he said he named her Lily. Her hands flew to her face. She sat back, rocking slightly, and I could see the trembling that she tried to hide. She whispered, "Oh God, oh God." The next hours were the most painful I've ever lived through. She told me everything. Every lie she had ever told me, every secret she had kept, every moment she had pretended our family was complete. Samuel had been taken away at birth, the consequence of a love deemed forbidden. He had grown up in another state, another life entirely. And now, he had a daughter. Lily. The same age as your little cousin. The walls of our house felt like they were closing in. I sank to the floor, the letters spilling like broken promises around me. I could still hear the faint echo of his words in my mind. I have a daughter now. I hope one day she will know the truth. And then it hit me, the twist I never saw coming. That child, Samuel's daughter, she had been living only a few blocks away all this time. Playing in the same park, walking past our house, existing in the same world, and we had no idea. I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands went to my head. I whispered, almost to myself, how could this happen? Your mother's hands gripped mine. Because some truths are too heavy, she said, her voice trembling. Too heavy for anyone to carry. That's why I lied. That's why I pretended it never happened. We sat there in silence, the rain drumming against the porch, the house around us seeming smaller, the shadows longer. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. The past wasn't done with us. It had a way of finding cracks, of slipping in unnoticed, and now it had come all the way back to the present. That night, I dreamt of the attic again. The trunk was open, letters spilling out like a river, and Samuel's face peered up at me from the shadows. Why didn't you tell us? He asked. His voice was a whisper, distant yet piercing. I woke screaming, heart pounding, cold sweat on my skin. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking. Every memory of your mother, every secret she had held, every lie I had told myself to protect her, it all came flooding back. I thought of the nights she cried silently, hiding under the covers, afraid to speak. I thought of my own silence, my fear of breaking her heart. And I realized that in trying to protect her, we had all been protecting a lie. But I also realized something else, that truth, however painful, had a power of its own. It had a way of forcing us to face ourselves, forcing us to reckon with what had been hidden. I went back to the attic. Alone this time. The trunk sat there, patient, waiting. I opened it again and carefully removed the letters, reading each one as though it were a sacred text. The rain pattered against the small window, the light falling just right on the faded papers. And I began to write. I wrote to Samuel. I wrote to the daughter I had never met, the child whose very existence was a miracle of survival and secrecy. I wrote to your mother, acknowledging her pain, her courage, her fear. I wrote to myself, too, trying to make sense of the weight we all carried. And then, finally, I wrote to you, my grandchildren. Not to tell you a story, not to entertain you, but to prepare you. To teach you that secrets, no matter how buried, have a way of finding light. That love, even when tangled with betrayal, can survive. That family, even fractured, can find its way back. I didn't know what the future would bring. I didn't know if Samuel or his daughter would ever forgive us for the years of absence, for the walls we built, for the lies we told. But I knew one thing, the past, however painful, had to be faced. And if I was too weak to do it, then who would be strong enough to carry the truth? I leaned back against the trunk, feeling the wood press against my spine. The rain continued, relentless, like the world itself was cleansing us, washing away years of silence and shame. I closed my eyes, listening to the rhythm, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Because truth, as brutal as it can be, also has a way of setting us free. And I promised myself, in that dimly lit attic, that I would do everything I could to reunite what had been broken. Not for me, not for your mother, but for the generations yet to come. For you. For the children who deserve to know who they are, no matter how dark the story behind them. I folded the letters carefully, placing them back in the trunk, and locked it again. This time, not out of fear, but out of respect. Out of a need to carry the past responsibly, with patience, with care. I descended the attic stairs slowly, each step deliberate, as if carrying the weight of the entire family on my back. When I reached the bottom, Lily was there. Her eyes were bright with curiosity, waiting. I held her hand and said, softly, "Some truths are heavy, baby. but they must be carried. And one day, you'll understand why. She nodded, squeezing my hand. And in that moment, I realized that though the story of Samuel, his daughter, and the trunk had shaken us to our cores, it had also bound us together. It had reminded us that family is not just about the present, but about the threads that connect past to future. And that, my loves, is where I will leave you tonight. On the edge of discovery, standing at the crossroads of past and future. Because the next part, the part where we face what was hidden and try to make it whole again, is where our real journey begins. The morning I finally met Samuel's daughter, I felt as though the world had tilted. My legs trembled as I approached the small coffee shop where we agreed to meet. Lily clung to my hand, and I could feel her pulse, quick and nervous, like mine. The letters had guided me, yes, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality, the living, breathing result of decades of secrets. She was seated at a corner table, staring out the window, hair tumbling over her shoulders, and she looked up at me with eyes I could have sworn I'd seen before. Eyes that held the same mixture of fear and hope that I had carried for all these years. And in that instant, I knew, history had not been erased. It had only been waiting for courage to meet it. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling, almost breaking. She studied me for a long moment, lips pressed together. "Are you my grandmother?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. I am." I paused, unsure how to speak the years of silence, the omissions, the lies that had shaped her life without her knowing. "I'm sorry. For everything." Her eyes softened just a fraction, but the wariness remained. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why after all these years?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. Because I finally realized that the truth, no matter how painful, belongs to you as much as it does to me. You should never have had to wonder who you were, or where you came from. I failed you by keeping it from you. I can't undo the past, but I can be here now. If you'll let me. There was a long silence, filled only by the soft clink of cups and the low hum of conversation around us. And then she smiled, tentatively, cautiously, but a smile that felt like a lifeline thrown across a canyon. "I've wondered about you," she said. "All my life. Sometimes I thought maybe you didn't exist. Maybe they were lying." "They weren't lying," I said. "They were afraid. But fear doesn't make the truth disappear. It only hides it until someone is brave enough to find it." She laughed softly, a sound like wind through trees, fragile but real. "Brave, huh? You've got a lot of nerve, coming all this way." I smiled back, feeling the tension in my chest ease just a little. "Yes," I admitted. "I've got nerve. And maybe too much curiosity. But also, a lot of love. Enough to admit my mistakes and try to make them right." We talked for hours, and every word was like a stitch in a wound that had been open for decades. She told me about her life, how she had grown up thinking she was alone in the world, how she'd always felt the pull of something missing. And as she spoke, I saw the shadow of my daughter in her face, the same stubbornness, the same heart that refused to break completely, even under the weight of betrayal. I remembered the attic, the trunk, the letters. Every secret I had uncovered had led to this moment, fragile and trembling, yet full of possibility. And I knew, deep down, that this was the moment where history could be healed, if only we allowed it. After she left, Lily and I walked home in silence. Rain had cleared, leaving the streets glistening, reflecting the sun in tiny fractured mirrors. I held Lily's hand tightly, feeling her warmth and life and hope. "That evening, I found your mother sitting in the same chair she had occupied when I first admitted opening the trunk. She didn't look up. 'Mom,' I said softly. I saw her. Samuel's daughter. She's real. She's alive. And she's amazing." She finally turned, eyes wide. You actually went?" I nodded. "I had to. And she wants to know you too. Wants to know the truth. Wants to know all of us. Her hands shook, gripping her knees. I don't know if I can face it after all these years. I knelt beside her. You don't have to face it alone. We can face it together. And maybe we can even forgive ourselves for what we didn't know, and what we were too afraid to do. Her tears fell freely, and I held her like I had held her as a child, aching with the memory of all the times I had failed to protect her while trying to shield her from the pain. I've carried this for too long, she whispered. I didn't know how to let it go. You're not alone anymore, I said. Not now. Not ever again. The days that followed were filled with calls, letters, and plans. Slowly, painfully, our fractured family began to stitch itself together. Samuel's daughter visited. Conversations were awkward at first, full of long pauses and unspoken grief. But over time, laughter returned. Stories were exchanged. Memories that had been hidden in shadows were now shared in light. One evening, sitting by the fireplace, I reflected on it all: the trunk, the letters, the hidden lives, the betrayals, the fear, and the courage it took to face the truth. I realized that family is not just blood or proximity. It's resilience. It's forgiveness. It's the willingness to meet the past head-on, to carry the weight of mistakes, and still reach out with love. I told your mother, Lily, and the others, secrets are dangerous. They grow in the dark and can twist our hearts. But truth, even when painful, has a way of setting us free. And I know now that love is not just about protection. It's about honesty. About risk. About the courage to open the trunk, to read the letters, to face the past and say, I'm here. I am willing. I will try to make this right. When you ask me now, my darlings, why I opened that trunk despite the warnings, I tell you, it wasn't curiosity, exactly. It wasn't defiance. It was love. Love for your mother, love for Samuel, love for the children who deserve to know the truth of who they are. And yes, the truth almost destroyed us. It almost tore our family apart. But it didn't. It gave us a second chance, a chance to rebuild, to forgive, to heal. It reminded us that life is too short to live in the shadow of secrets. So remember this, my loves, when you inherit the past, do not fear it. Face it. Because it is only in facing it, fully, bravely, with open hearts, that you can find the freedom to love without fear, to forgive without limits, and to leave a legacy that honors the truth of who we are. The trunk in the attic is locked again now. But it is no longer a source of fear. It is a reminder. A reminder that family, even when fractured by betrayal, can find its way back through courage, honesty, and love. And as I sit here, telling you this story, I hope you understand, life is fragile. The bonds we think unbreakable can be tested in ways we never imagine. But the heart, resilient and tender, can mend what was once shattered. And sometimes, the most terrifying, heartbreaking moments hold the greatest lessons of all. I hope you carry that lesson with you. Not as a burden. Not as a warning. But as a guide. A promise that even in the face of betrayal, of loss, of secrets kept too long, love, our love, will endure. That is the story of the trunk. Of Samuel. Of our hidden past. Of the child who waited, and the family who finally, painfully, found her. And now, my darlings, it is your story too.